I'm not even sure if this video is ever going to make it out there, to be honest. Maybe it's just for me. Maybe I'll watch it back in a few years and go, you know what, that was a turning point for me. Or maybe someone else will hear something that they needed to hear. Either way, it feels like it could be pretty significant for me. So I'm feeling compelled to do it anyway. I had the camera up and I've been thinking about the next few weeks and months ahead, and I wanted to do this. And I've only shared with a few people what is to come for me in the next few weeks and months, and I got the predictable response, to be honest with you. Exactly what you might expect: skepticism, confusion, nervous laughter, a couple of "so you go into the jungle to take a load of drugs" comments. Honestly, that response says more about modern Western society, I think, than it does about the experience that I'm about to embark on itself. Because what I'm doing isn't about escaping or chasing a high. It's about continuing to try and figure out things for myself as opposed to being a human puppet. It's about confronting and it's about exploring and opening new doors into myself with the intention of trying to learn something. And hopefully I will learn something. And learning is something that I haven't been able to access through thinking alone sometimes. That kind of shallow take drugs in the jungle just confirms some of the things that I'm questioning more than ever at this moment in time about how disconnected we've become from our own thinking, right? Disconnected from nature, disconnected from the inner world, or from any kind of practice that isn't wrapped in bullshit productivity or profit, right? And I'm not ashamed to say that in the day, back in the 20s, yeah, I experimented with recreational drugs as many people did. And I'm not going to lie, I had some great times, right? Ibiza and Glastonbury were fixed on our calendar for many years, right? And the occasional times that I tried magic mushrooms, those experiences actually remain quite vivid in my memory to this very day, right? Not just about how it made me feel, but what it revealed, and the fact that there was clearly a bit of depth there beyond anything else that I'd ever experienced, right? And a perspective shift that I couldn't quite explain at the time. And that curiosity has never really left me. And perhaps it was meant to be that I came across Graham Hancock's TED Talk that was actually banned in 2018. And that introduced me, at least intellectually, to ayahuasca. I'll play a clip for it.
Annoyed, jealous, possessive, suspicious. I was subject to irrational rages. I often made the life of my beloved partner, Santha, a misery. And when I went down for my regular encounter with ayahuasca in October 2011, I was given the most unbelievable kicking by Mother Ayahuasca.
But he spoke about the war on consciousness in that video, and about how ancient plant medicine has been used for thousands of years to explore the inner world, and how modern culture has basically criminalized that exploration. And that talk openly, it openly spoke about ayahuasca, of course, but it also opened something up in me, I think, not because it was rebellious, but it actually made a lot of sense. And it sent me down a few rabbit holes. And when I go down a rabbit hole, it kind of unlocks a different level of thinking. And now, years later, I feel like there's a number of things that, in my view, have aligned to call me to go and find out for myself all about this experience. And my coaching being one of those things that's aligned, having space to be relentless with curiosity, turning down the bullshit noise that I've been hearing for many years, and continuing to reflect on my parents as well, and knowing that the work on yourself only stops if you choose to settle. Not to mention the actual practicalities of doing it seem to have aligned to me as well, given where I'm currently at. So I'm heading to Peru in a couple of weeks' time with one of my best mates to meet Mother Ayahuasca. If you haven't got a fucking clue what I'm talking about, check out the Graham Hancock TED Talk, or if you prefer to be entertained, I'll link up another video to Andrew Schultz and a shaman as well, who speak openly about ayahuasca and what it does and its experience and how it's made. And let me just call out a contradiction whilst I'm here. There'll be people who throw shit at this, I'm sure. If you watch this video, if I tell you about it, you're going to throw shit at it. You'll mock it, dismiss it, question my sanity, no doubt. Jungle drugs, sounds a bit Mad Dave, what the fuck are you doing? Yet some of those same people spend every weekend smashing pints or relaxing, air quotes, with a bottle of red, using alcohol as their own way to wind down or to connect with others. And I say that with absolutely no judgment because I've been that guy too. But here's the thing, right? Since going alcohol free, Stara Praman, it's not bad actually, I see things a lot clearer. The contrast for me at this moment in time is hard to ignore. You choose a path of intentional inner work, ayahuasca in the jungle, and it's labelled extreme. You choose sedation through a socially accepted substance and you're just blowing off steam, right? To me, that shines a spotlight on how deep the societal matrix actually runs. What's normal, what's acceptable, what we've all been conditioned to believe is safe, fun and fine, even when it slowly erodes our physical health, emotional awareness and any kind of spiritual depth that we might ever even want to explore. So for me, this journey is not about rebellion at all. It's about freedom, freedom from my own habits, my old beliefs, from inherited patterns. And my intentions are pretty simple: to open and stretch my mind beyond the edges of what I currently know and believe, and to see if there's something more to continue to propel me to where I want to go. I'm deeply curious about what unconscious blocks might be holding me back. I speak about unconscious beliefs a lot with my clients, but no matter how much mindset work I've done, I know there's still going to be blind spots there, whether it's emotional patterns, old wounds. Maybe this is the path to help to bring them to the light. Finally, I'm open to whatever messages might arise from our past experiences as well. Any lessons that I've missed, any connections that I've failed to make, or moments that deserve to be re-seen as well, perhaps through a different lens. So what is also interesting to me with all of this is the more I think about the journey, the more I also see how deeply I think it aligns with Stoicism, which I've been also getting into and going deep on. Okay, and this, on the surface, it might seem like they are worlds apart. Stoicism talks about reason, order, discipline. Psychedelics, you might think, talk about chaos, surrender and wild visions. But if you dig a little deeper, I think the connection becomes a lot clearer actually. And Stoicism trains us to imagine and examine ourselves, to question our own beliefs, confront our fears and detach from our ego. And psychedelics force people into the exact same space. Stoics practiced the view from above, zooming out to see the bigger picture of life. And people on psychedelics often describe that very same perspective, not just understanding it, but actually reports of experiencing it, becoming one with nature and the universe, right? Feeling their ego dissolve completely, gaining a clearer view of problems and their individual place in the world. Where Stoicism teaches humility, psychedelics are seen to and reported to show it. And where Stoicism asks for reflection, psychedelics will demand it. That's what I'm expecting. And when those insights come, not as ideas, but as felt truths, that will be pretty powerful in my opinion. So at this moment in time, it remains speculation for me. As I sit here in Manchester, thousands of miles away from the Amazon and the Sacred Valley in Peru, however, that speculation excites me and it scares me a little bit, and I'm not stepping away from my values by doing this. In fact, I'm stepping into them more fully, more honestly and more experientially, I guess. And this isn't about chasing a high at all. This is about going deeper into who I am so I can serve myself and others more powerfully, live more fully and lead with greater integrity as well. Maybe I'll do some videos out there too when I'm in Peru, and when I return, hopefully I'll share what I've learned as well, not as advice and not as answers, but just as an offering from one guy who is looking to try and make an impact, because whether or not it's on the battlefield in Rome, or whether or not it's in my attic in Manchester, or in the Sacred Valley of Peru, the same question will always arise. Is this it? Okay, is this it? And now, for me at least, it's time to try and find out. So maybe you'll see this video when I finally get back, and I'll see you on the other side, as they say.
One. Right, I'm back, and I want to be honest with you from the start. I didn't film while I was out there at the retreat. It just didn't feel right. I wasn't in the right headspace, and I wasn't there to create content, right? I was there to go inwards, to do the work, to face whatever came up without any distraction. And honestly, even if I tried to film it, it wouldn't have captured what actually happened. But now, with some space, with some reflection, with some journaling, and having reviewed my notes the last few days, I'm ready to share this. Not because I've figured it all out, but because I think there's something in this that might land with someone else. And to be honest with you, for me, it's about therapy, myself, and how I integrate now. So here goes. We spent a couple of days in Cusco to start with, a full cultural immersion. The dieta, the intention setting, time to slow down, time to tune in. And I shared it with one of my best mates for 35 years of friendship behind us, right? And it was an amazing city. In fact, I'm going back next year and I can't wait. And then all of a sudden came the journey to the Sacred Valley. It's about 17 of us in total, I think, strangers from all over the world, some from the UK, some from America, Canada, Philippines, Singapore, you kind of name it. It was all over the world, carrying different stories, different reasons for being there, different levels of experience working with either ayahuasca or other psychedelic therapy procedures, if you like. But one thing that united us all, something inside us had called us to this place in the middle of the Sacred Valley. And the retreat centre itself was breathtaking. Mountains surrounding us like ancient guardians, waterfalls kind of running through the grounds, singing in the distance, and in the morning as well, and llamas just wandering around the grounds like they were dogs. And everywhere was just stillness and a sense that time has somehow stopped or slowed down. But beneath all that peace, there was this underbelly of tension between the group, a quiet nervousness, if you like, unspoken and spoken fear, that feeling that something was about to happen that we couldn't ever take back. And the opening session was with one of the founders about 30 minutes after we'd arrived. It was an hour's worth of orientation, and he spoke of the ayahuasca brew itself, the chicana, which is the Andean cross, the traditions of the Inca, the culture, the heritage, and most of all, the respect that the medicine of ayahuasca demands. And the two words that I'll never forget, which we took forward with us into the ceremony, was fear and surrender. Two opposites, if you like, of the same bridge. And from there, things started to move pretty quickly. We met the shaman who was there to guide us. We met the psychological and the physical medical teams there to support us. We agreed on our initial ayahuasca doses for that evening. And by 6 o'clock on the day of arrival, we'd kind of entered the Maloka, which is the sacred ceremony space, which started off an hour really of preparation, which was some yoga, some breath work, some prayer, some gratitude, everything really to get us in the right mindset and to slow us down. Everything was becoming really intentional. And then by 7 o'clock, the first ceremony began, and one by one we stepped forward to receive our first cup of ayahuasca, and the maestra said one word after everyone had collected their cup: salute. And just like that, down went the first brew, and it was all happening. And for me, it was around 3 years of thinking about this moment, on and off, not every day obviously, but on and off, and it was kind of gone in one single sip. And then the lights went out in the Maloko, and here's the part that gets hard to talk about, because not because I don't remember it, but there's just simply not words really that can do it justice. It's like trying to explain colour to someone who's only ever seen black and white. So we used to operate in this 3D world with cause and effect, start and finish and logic. But what happens in the ceremony, it's not like a dream, it's not like imagination, it's not like visualization. This is going to another place. And it started slowly for me that first night. The candle in the middle of the room began to send this stream of light, this coloured light towards me. And then in the centre of the room came faces, like glowing, majestic type beings, but they were visions at that time, like guides, energies, Pachamama, or Mother Earth, as they say, or Father Sky, which is a male face. And they're almost like floating in the space there, like watching and listening. But everything then started to feel a bit less stable, and the room starts to kind of slip away, and the sounds start to distort, and then there's a wave of what you call purging echoing around the Maloka, people kind of puking up, vomiting. And they call it purging because it's a case of emptying the system. It's not just the physical process of puking, it's the emotional emptying of stuff that people are hanging on to. And you kind of warned about this in advance, but the sound, you're not quite ready for it. And I was approached kind of gently, probably about 30 minutes in, asking how I was doing, and I was still pretty present. No purge, definitely no sort of nausea, still the really strong visions. And then I was instructed that we're going to increase your dose. So came the carer, if you like, half a cup more, no hesitation, went down. And then things started to really change for me. The room tension started to increase. There was screams, movement. One guy had to actually be carried out or wheeled out in a wheelchair. It was chaos. The visuals for me started to explode. Colours started to move faster than my eyes could keep track of it all. And patterns were really complex to follow, like a tunnel, kind of pulling me into something bigger than anything I can really comprehend. And then snap, almost like that. It was the visions had changed. It wasn't a visual experience. The room had just basically gone. And this is where it's hard to be clear, but it wasn't just a visual experience. It was not a vivid dream. It's like you cross reality into a second realm, into a different dimension. And this one, it felt realer than the actual dimension, if that makes sense. And you're not alone. There was actual beings there, not imagined, not metaphorical, but real felt presence. They didn't speak, but I understood everything that was happening. I could feel them before I could see them. It was almost intelligence or intentional. And it felt like they were there to comfort me, and they were there to show me the truth. And they began dismantling my ego in front of me, almost brick by brick. Every shortcoming in my life, every mask that I've worn, every way that I showed up fell short of the guy that I'm trying to be. Whether it's my role as a husband, a father, a coach, there was literally no hiding. It was like my being was being peeled back. And it wasn't cruel, but it was almost unforgiving in many ways. And you have to cling to your intention when you go in. My intention on the first session was pretty clear. Show me how I can extend myself for my own growth and that of others. But it felt like an endless loop, lesson after lesson, reminder after reminder of my shortcomings and my failings based on the current reality that I'm living and my past experience as well. And then Amanda, my wife, appeared. It wasn't as if it was imagined. It was a presence, like she'd stepped into the room exactly how she does in real life many times. Posed, clear, almost holding the answers that I was looking for. And the love and the gratitude that I felt for her in that moment was like something that I've never experienced before. And I spoke to her, thanked her, told her everything was perfect about her. And we almost went back and forth in that dimension for what seemed like hours. And she kept on pulling me back safely into that conversation. And then my kids appeared. Connie, my daughter, was singing this spring chicken song, sitting on an exercise ball which resides in the house. Ralph appeared with an insight that landed deep in my chest. He didn't say it, but I heard it. It was a message. It was, stop saying you need to do X, Y, and Z, and start asking me, what do you need? One simple change from kind of control into connection, it hit me like a thunderbolt between the eyes. And then music started to become more apparent. The shaman or the maestro sing this Icarus, which is an indigenous vocal performance, if you like, and it weaves through the air, it guides the room, it sends the energy one way and another. And then the maestro came to me to sing at the end of my bed, kneeling in front of me, and her voice was carrying something that wasn't just sound. It felt like the medicine was talking to me through the energy. And when she finished her Icarus, she sprayed this Florida water across my energy, and it just exhaled across my whole body. And there was a scent to it, but it wasn't a scent. It felt like just a pure wave of gratitude had hit me, and it was entering every cell in my body, and I could finally relax after that. It felt like, and this was going on for hours, by the way, my ego had been dismantled time and time again. I'd travelled to a realm beyond anything that I can explain. I'm trying to do this right now, but it just doesn't do it justice. But I'd been shown everything that really matters, and I was helped back to my feet at the end of the night, completely unstable, physically shaken, unable to move with any coherence. But inside it felt as though I had some real clear messages, and it was real. And that was only the beginning. That was session 1. So the second ceremony was the very next night, but the fear that was holding on to hadn't really gone anywhere. If anything, it was amplified in the knowledge that I now knew at least the power of the medicine, and the fact that one guy had been kind of wheelchaired out of the ceremony was a discussion point, and it laid heavy a little bit on the group as reality set in with regards to the power of the medicine. And we spent the day, or some of the day, volunteering at a local school, which really helped to anchor us in reality a bit. But inside I was still carrying the intensity from the night before. I was tired, I was shaken, definitely wasn't feeling ready for that second ceremony at all. But I knew that I needed to choose faith over fear, and going back to surrender, as the founder was saying, surrender over control, I guess. And that was going to be the way forward. And the dose that night was half a cup to start with. The same routine in advance of getting the dose, but the dose was half a cup. It was smaller in quantity than the total from the first night, when I had a quarter, then a half. But actually it was a stronger initial dose, if that makes sense, to start with. So no adjustments, given the cup, no choices after the serving. And what followed for me that second night was surprisingly more gentle and more controlled than the first night. But again, within 15 minutes, Pachamama, Mother Earth, returned in terms of the vision in the centre of the room. She appeared really clearly, sat in the centre of the Maloka. It wasn't intense for me at that moment in time. It wasn't overwhelming. It was calm. There was presence there. Felt really powerful in the stillness of this being. And I knew immediately this night was going to be different. Still deep, still really real, but not there to crush me like the first night. It was here to show me, right? They say that ayahuasca is a teaching medicine, and I felt that the second night. It was here to show me and show me some learnings, right? And the visuals returned, vibrant, fluid, beautiful colours. But again, it wasn't about the visuals, because soon enough, just like the first night, the room disappeared and I was left in a world and crossed back into a different realm again, the second dimension, if you like, but which I've read about many times, but you can't explain it until you're projected there. But this time I didn't really feel as scared or as afraid as the first night. I felt more steady, more conscious, more in control. I was aware somehow of noises around me. Again, kind of violent purging, crying, groaning, the release of chaos in the room. I didn't purge the first night and I didn't purge the second night, but internally I felt really centered, and I kept repeating to myself out loud, you are in control, you are always in control. And that phrase became a bit of a lifeline for me in this ceremony and the final ceremony as well. And every time something dark or disorientating tried to creep in, I spoke it again and I meant it, you are in control. And when negative thoughts arrived, I physically started to move my arms around and to push the energy around the room. And when something good came, I was able to draw it in. It was like I could work with the energy in the room, shape it, influence it. And it must have looked like I was dancing in the hacienda at one point, kind of big fish, little fish type stuff. But that wasn't the point for me. It wasn't dancing to any of the music. It was about energy control, and it felt euphoric in many ways. But then again, out of nowhere, and bearing in mind I hadn't asked for this as part of my intention, on that second night my mum appeared, right? My mum passed away 13 years ago, and while I think about her often, almost daily, I didn't go to Peru to work through any trauma or any grief, but you know, she was there in the eye of the Maloka A ceiling of the Maloka had been designed with this stunning open space which looked like an eye looking down on you. And my mum appeared there. She was surrounded by glowing, laughing, just beaming with this presence and peace. And the second that I saw her, her face broke open into a smile that I just could not control. And the smile, not infected, that sounds negative, right? It didn't infect. It took over the whole of my face. Every muscle in my body softened to start with, and every muscle then embraced this smile. There was no words needed, and there was no words exchanged, no sentences. It was just energy. It was pure and clear energy. And I asked my mum, without even speaking, whether I was doing the right thing. And I think on reflection, I meant that in terms of the experience that I was undertaking in Peru, but just in general, am I on the right path? And in return, I got her energy. It was laughter, it was smiling, it was affirmation, no language needed, but the answer was loud and clear. It was, yes, you are. And it was the most powerful connection that I've ever felt with her, for sure, even more powerful than when she was alive, which seems ridiculous, I know, but it was real. And no question in my mind that it was real either. And the rest of the ceremony for me that second night flowed pretty gently. There was moments of thinking where I could gather my thoughts, moments of stillness, of breath, moments where it felt like everything just made sense. And I saw how powerful the simple things in life are. How much in life is already enough if you actually pay attention. And crystal clear messages started to flow in. Not big, grand, dramatic revelations, just true, profound messages which are really simple. Moments of presence, how I should show up for people, how I should hold space, how much of an impact a single question can have. Everything felt like energy, movable, shapeable, touchable. When something dark arrived, I was able to push it away. When I say dark, it was either a negative thought or something that just wasn't welcome in my space. I was able to physically push the energy away. And when clarity came, I was able to pull it in. And it wasn't breaking down my ego like the first night. It felt like an integration of things that really mattered, and a reminder of who I am and how I want to live. And as I lay there, I was kind of surrounded by the sounds of the Maloka, the Icarus, the songs weaving in and out. It was amazing. I realised something about the first night, and after an ego death of night one, this was one to embrace. It was like a reminder, the deep knowing that you already have enough and that you already are enough. And it felt like a feeling of gratitude. So that second ceremony for me was, I would say, 90% pleasant. And then we were moving into night 3. So after 2 ceremonies and almost 2 full days of rest, I actually felt quite ready for the 3rd ceremony. We'd done some more volunteering, some more work on sharing circles, integration, lots of time to reflect and to journal. But if I'm being really honest, I was still carrying fear and still afraid, and that layer of fear hadn't really gone anywhere. And I spent most of the day vacillating between confidence and apprehension, trying to get really clear with my intention whilst also trying not to hold on to any expectations. And that tension stayed with me all the way until we got to the Maloka, and the pre-ceremony rituals really helped. Meditation, we did some dancing, which was a bit odd without any music anyway, and then suddenly without any real discussion, you kind of find yourself kneeling in front of the maestro again, receiving your dose of ayahuasca. And I was given half a cup, which felt manageable because it felt familiar from the night before, but I hadn't forgotten that familiar doesn't always mean safe, right? And this time I asked Mother Ayahuasca, or asked the medicine, if you like, how can I ascend to my next level? That was my intention for that evening. And in hindsight, maybe that was a bit arrogant of me. Maybe I wasn't ready for the answer. But it began as it had done before. There was visuals, shapes, bright colours. A really clear warrior figure appeared, male, strong and grounded, in the centre of the room where the candle was, and it felt like a protector kind of watching from the centre of the room, if you like. And the colours then started to move faster. The patterns were less predictable than before. A tunnel of colour and shapes appeared. But this time it didn't just kind of pull me in, it sucked me through, and it was like almost like a moment of bang. And just like that, I was gone again. It wasn't metaphorically gone. It wasn't kind of spiritually gone. It was just gone. The room had vanished. My body had completely vanished. Everything that I knew to be real had gone. And I found myself in a completely different dimension. And there were beings there again. And it felt scary. This time they weren't guides. There wasn't any warmth there. They weren't necessarily frightening at first. They were like operatives is the only word that I can use to describe it, because it was almost like they were running the back end of the universe. I know this sounds odd and strange. They didn't have any faces, there was no hierarchy, there was just a presence there, but they all had purpose. And it was almost like they were saying to each other and to me, if you know, you know. That was, that phrase, if you know, you know. It was that type of situation, which sounds totally ridiculous when I say it back. I wasn't overly scared at that point until I realised what they were showing me. And the message that I was receiving is that everything is scripted, that we waste so much time and so much energy trying to control things that we can't control. And the lesson landed pretty hard. There's a line between kind of empowerment and delusion, between intention and having control, and between kind of doing your best and thinking that you're in charge. And then faces started to appear. These were real faces from my life, from my past. They were clear, they were undistorted, like photos almost. Some people that I love and hold closely, some I barely think about, some I never think about until this moment. From current day, from years ago, from my childhood. And the message again felt like it was pretty clear. Everybody has a role in your life. Everybody can be a teacher. Be grateful, be open, and be humble. These words weren't spoken during this experience. These were messages that I seemed to be getting from these entities, right? And even those individuals who felt as though they're peripheral in your life shape your current reality and who you are. I saw my sister as well, and I felt pure pride. No words, just a recognition of everything that she's achieved, everything she's built, everything that she fully deserves. And just as I thought that this particular dimension, if you like, was the lesson, it kind of flipped again and went one dimension even further. I was pulled even deeper into the experience, right? And this time there were no beings, there was no visuals that I could interpret at all. It was just absolute chaos. There was shifting shapes, impossible colours to describe. The dimension was beyond 3D, it was beyond 4D, it was just beyond D, if that makes any sense whatsoever. I had no idea whether my eyes were open or shut. It made no difference whether I was looking up, down, left or right. The room was gone. I had gone, the music had gone, my body wasn't there. Even my thoughts were just completely fractured, and I was being dragged to the edge of what felt like the edge of my existence. And the word that kept showing up for me loud, sharp and unmistakable was death. I don't know if I'd thought it, I don't know if I'd heard it or said it, but it was there. And I wasn't ready for it. And I remember kind of whispering, almost pleading, I'm not ready to go, over and over again. And here's the thing that is really hard to explain. It feels like you're there for a lifetime. Time didn't just slow down, it kind of collapses in front of you, and it's like you're stuck in this strange dimension for what feels like years. And it's not just perception. You started the ceremonies at 7 p.m, and when I eventually came out of that one on the final night, it was 3:30 a.m. So you're over, 8 hours in that space. And for most of it, you're not even on that planet. And I just remember taking huge primal breaths to just feel alive, like really deep, loud breathing, just so I could feel like I still actually had a body again and a life, and to hold on to something. And I've always believed in the power of breath, but that really saved me again on that third night. And the mantra came back, you are always in control. And then again, hats off to my wife Amanda, she appeared again as a circuit breaker, almost like a lifeline. And again, she didn't speak, she didn't have to, but her presence just completely calmed me down and anchored me along with the breath. It was like she saved me again. And I told her through the ether how grateful I was, and I know that she always saves me even when she doesn't realise it in the real world. But even at that point I wasn't out of it. The loop kept on continuing back and forth between this world of complete nonsense and chaos, and then being pulled out of it by my loved ones. And Amanda kept appearing again and again until finally the intensity then starts to ease and starts to wear off. And in that space then came more anchors that I could use. Connie, my daughter, was there dancing. She dances on this exercise ball to this song about spring chickens. That grounded me and centered me again. And Ralph, my son, appeared in his high school uniform. He's never worn it yet. But the message was just so proud and it was so clear. And familiarity then started to return a little bit. And then the sound came back. The Icarus, the breath of the shaman, the sounds of purging, flutes in the room, the chants, the soft kind of hum of the maloka. And it was tough. There was crying, screaming. Someone in the room gave birth. Obviously, didn't actually give birth, but they were literally screaming that they were having a baby. And then there's the smells, the scent of the smoke and the Florida water, which the maestro sprays around the room, starts to bring you back into at least a space that you can comprehend. And yeah, bizarrely, a naked man next to me, sitting on his mat, looking over at me, literally no clothes on, and said, highly recommend. Didn't even know if I was laughing or hallucinating at the time, but it definitely happened because it was confirmed the next day. And it was, like I said, it was around 3:30 a.m. I finally stood up, kind of shaky, pretty shattered. Felt like I'd actually faced my death that evening and ushered gently back to my room via the medical checkout. That was definitely the most intense ceremony out of the three. And the next morning, we gathered and we were asked, what has the medicine taught you? And honestly, it's Wednesday and I came back on Sunday. I'm still processing all of this and still got a lot to do to try and integrate this. But as much as I know, the things are showing up for me. So fear, courage and vulnerability. Those three things are a threesome, right? And you don't want to run from them. You have to embrace them. You have to really let them work for you. And then you'll find the answers that you've been looking for. And the answers that you've pretended that for years that you don't already know. So those three words were coming out every single night. And those not just words, but the feelings. And the feeling of pure gratitude and realizing that gratitude is not a list that you kind of write down every morning. Of course, yes, that helps to practice it, but actually gratitude is a feeling. And when you're shown a world where everything that you love has completely vanished and you don't know when you're going to return, you don't need a gratitude journal to really understand what matters. You just need to come home and get out of it. So lots to work through, lots of learning. Would I recommend ayahuasca to anybody? No, absolutely not. I would recommend that you have to make your own decision. If it sounds intriguing, maybe start where I did, which was the Graham Hancock TED Talk, which got banned. I think he did it in 2018. You can still find it on YouTube. Or he has a series now on Apocalypse Now. And if you want to go down that route, that'll just send you down different rabbit holes and do lots of research. Would I do it again? No, not anytime soon. I've got a lot to think about and to integrate before I even think about that. Lots of reflection, lots of living, lots of priorities. Maybe again in a few years. There's a guy that we shared a room with who'd done his first ceremony 6 years ago. This was his second round of it. And that timeline sounds about right to me. So maybe I'll go again. I think I'm 43, so I'll be 50 in 7 years. That could be a good trip, right? So that's me for now. I'll see you in the next one, I guess.